Welcome to Ultimate Sleep Doctor. Tonight, we'll explore a journey of incredible wonder. Across vast distances, driven by ancient instincts, birds and insects undertake the most extraordinary migrations on Earth. It's a silent dance of survival, a testament to the power of nature's rhythm. These journeys, guided by the sun and stars, are a beautiful example of the interconnectedness of all living things. There's a quiet strength in this movement, a peaceful understanding of the natural order. Allow yourself to feel the stillness of the night, the vastness of the skies above. If you find solace in understanding the world's secrets, we invite you to subscribe and share this channel with others seeking calm and knowledge. Just breathe, let your thoughts drift like clouds. Let's begin. Deep within the heart of every bird, nestled alongside instinctual drives for feeding and nesting, lies a secret clock, a remarkable internal mechanism known as the circannual rhythm. It's not a clock ticking in the way we understand, with hands moving around a face. Instead, it's a profound, synchronized shift occurring across nearly every cell in the bird's body. This isn't a sudden, dramatic event, but rather a gradual, almost imperceptible, unfolding, stretching over a period of weeks, and ultimately culminating in a powerful, undeniable urge to fly. Scientists have been painstakingly unraveling the intricacies of this rhythm for decades, and the more they discover, the more extraordinary the bird's navigational abilities become. The circannual rhythm is fundamentally linked to the changing length of daylight, the photoperiod. As autumn approaches, the days grow shorter, and this decrease in sunlight acts as the initial trigger. But it's not simply the S amount of light that matters, it's the S rate of decrease. The circannual rhythm responds most powerfully to the accelerating shortening of days, recognizing this as a signal that winter is coming and that a period of resource scarcity is imminent. This response isn't just limited to visual perception. It's a complex interplay of hormonal and neurological changes. Within the bird's brain, specifically the hypothalamus, a region crucial for regulating many bodily functions, a cascade of events begins. The primary hormone involved is prolactin, often called the migratory hormone. Initially, prolactin levels remain stable. However, as the days shorten, prolactin production increases steadily. This increase doesn't just build up, it's carefully regulated, responding directly to the falling photoperiod. Simultaneously, other neurochemicals, including melatonin, which is produced in response to darkness, play a supporting role, further amplifying the signal. The rising levels of prolactin begin to influence gene expression, altering the production of proteins within the bird's cells. These changes are particularly noticeable in cells involved in muscle development, fat storage, and, critically, in the nervous system itself. The bird's muscles begin to adapt, building up reserves of energy to fuel the enormous journey ahead. Simultaneously, the nervous system's pathways are strengthened, enhancing the bird's sensory abilities and preparing it for the demands of sustained flight. But the real magic happens when the circannual rhythm begins to synchronize with the navigational mechanisms. Research, particularly on species like the Arctic tern, has revealed a startling connection. These terns undertake the longest migration of any bird, traveling from the Arctic to the Antarctic and back again each year. The circannual rhythm isn't just driving the desire to move. It's actively influencing the precise routes they take. Scientists have discovered that as the photoperiod shortens, the tern's internal compass, a system reliant on the Earth's magnetic field and the position of the sun, becomes increasingly sensitive. The bird's brain essentially calibrates itself to the approaching winter. It's believed that the increasing prolactin levels directly affect the sensitivity of these navigational pathways, sharpening the bird's ability to sense magnetic fields and celestial cues. This calibration isn't a conscious decision, it's a deeply ingrained, instinctive process owned over countless generations. Furthermore, the circannual rhythm seems to influence the bird's ability to learn and remember migratory routes. Young birds, even those born in captivity, will instinctively begin to orient themselves in the correct direction as the photoperiod decreases. This suggests that the circannual rhythm isn't just initiating migration, but also actively providing the navigational information needed to achieve it. It's important to note that the circannual rhythm isn't a simple on-off switch. There's a gradual build-up of migratory preparedness, with various physiological and behavioral changes occurring over weeks or months before the bird actually takes flight. These preparatory changes include increased appetite, preparation of the feathers for long-distance flight, and an increase in restlessness, a subtle, internal agitation that hints at the impending journey. The exact mechanisms by which the circannual rhythm orchestrates these complex changes are still being investigated, and it remains one of the most fascinating areas of avian research. Scientists are exploring the roles of epigenetic modifications, changes in gene expression, that aren't directly caused by alterations in the DNA sequence, and the potential influence of social cues, such as the movements of other migrating birds. The remarkable precision with which birds navigate using this internal rhythm is truly astounding. They can follow ancient migratory routes, often traveling thousands of miles with incredible accuracy, despite changes in weather conditions and geographical features. It's a testament to the power of evolution and the intricate workings of the circannual rhythm, a hidden clock within each bird, guiding them on their incredible journeys, all driven by the subtle, but profound, changes in the length of the days. The preparation unfolds quietly, a symphony of internal adjustments, until finally, the signal is irresistible, and the bird lifts into the sky, following its ancient, inherited path, a tiny, feathered embodiment of this extraordinary phenomenon. The autumnal light was already beginning to slant differently, painting the fields of southern England with longer shadows and a richer gold. A small, intense focus had settled upon a single European robin, a male named Pipkin, as he perched on a hawthorn bush, meticulously examining a cluster of berries. Pipkin wasn't simply seeking a tasty meal. His attention was fixed on a subtle, almost invisible shift in the air around him. He was, in his own way, navigating towards a destination thousands of miles away, guided by a secret language woven into the fabric of the Earth itself, the Earth's magnetic field. Scientists have spent decades unraveling the remarkable ability of robins, and indeed many other migratory birds, to sense and respond to this field. It's not a conscious, I'm following a compass kind of process, but rather a deeply ingrained, genetically controlled reaction, triggered by specialized cells within their eyes. These cells, called cryptochromes, contain a light, sensitive protein called flavoprotein. This flavoprotein is the key. When light enters the eye, it causes the flavoprotein to change shape, initiating a cascade of biochemical reactions that ultimately influence the activity of neurons in the robin's brain. The connection between light and the magnetic field isn't immediately obvious. The crucial part is that the changes in flavoprotein's shape induced by light create a tiny electrical signal. This signal is incredibly weak, but it's precisely this sensitivity that allows the cryptochromes to act as receptors for the Earth's magnetic field. The magnetic field itself is produced by the movement of molten iron deep within the planet's core. It's a complex, ever-changing field, and the robins aren't detecting a simple north indication. Instead, they're responding to the ass inclination, the angle at which the magnetic field lines intersect the Earth's surface, and the as intensity of the field. Researchers have developed ingenious experiments to study this process. One of the most common techniques involves placing robins in a darkened chamber. A magnetic field is then carefully manipulated around the bird. Using highly sensitive magnetometers, scientists can measure the electrical activity in the robin's eyes, specifically within the cryptochromes. The data reveals a clear response. When the magnetic field angle changes, the cryptochromes become more or less active. It's like a tiny, internal antenna tuning in to the Earth's magnetic song. Importantly, the sensitivity of these cryptochromes is dramatically affected by light. This is why Pipkin was focused on those berries. The light reflecting off their surfaces was providing the essential trigger. Researchers have found that robins, especially young ones still reliant on inherited navigational information, require light exposure to properly calibrate their magnetic sensitivity. The light essentially sets the dial for their internal compass. Without sufficient light, the cryptochromes remain largely inactive, and the robin's ability to navigate accurately is severely compromised. The precise relationship between the magnetic field and the cryptochromes is still an area of active research. Scientists are continually refining their understanding of how different magnetic parameters, inclination, intensity, and even the complex variations within the field, are processed by the robin's brain. It's not just a simple one-to-one mapping. The brain seems to integrate information from multiple sources, including the magnetic field, the position of the sun, and landmarks, creating a remarkably robust navigational system. Interestingly, the level of light Pipkin needed varied depending on his age and experience. Young robins, having just learned to migrate, relied heavily on light-induced calibration. Older, experienced birds could navigate with less light, suggesting that they had learned the magnetic landscape over many migrations. This highlights the remarkable plasticity of the nervous system and the way that learning can shape fundamental biological processes. As Pipkin continued his observation, the autumnal colors deepened and the wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of approaching winter. The magnetic field, constantly shifting and changing, was a constant guide, subtly influencing his movements. He wasn't consciously deciding to fly south. Instead, a genetically encoded urge, combined with the reliable directional input from the Earth's magnetic field, propelled him steadily towards the warmer climes of Spain and Portugal. The complex choreography of Pipkin's migration, along with countless other birds and insects, underscores the incredible sophistication of the natural world. It demonstrates a profound integration of genetics, sensory perception, and environmental cues, a testament to the power of evolution to create solutions that are both elegant and remarkably effective. The robin's journey, guided by the invisible language of the Earth's magnetic field, is a story of instinct, adaptation, and the enduring power of migration. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the milkweed leaves a soft orange. Beneath this gentle glow, a tiny drama was unfolding, one largely hidden from human eyes, yet profoundly intricate. We've spent time understanding how birds and robins sense the world through magnetism and internal clocks. Now, let's turn our attention to a completely different story, a story etched onto the tiny bodies of monarch butterfly larvae, a tale of chemical mapping and instinctive journeys. These larvae, the caterpillars, hold a secret, an incredibly precise and sophisticated navigation system, based not on magnetic fields or biological clocks, but on a complex interplay of chemicals, specifically pheromones. For a long time, scientists considered monarch larvae simply drifting with the wind, relying on chance to reach the right location for their overwintering journey. However, extensive research, primarily conducted by Dr. Joseph Ratner and his team at the University of Illinois, revealed a far more active and directed behavior. The caterpillars, once they reach a mature size, cease feeding on milkweed and begin a remarkable, sustained movement, a crawl, towards the Gulf Coast of Mexico, where they will transform into butterflies and spend the winter. This wasn't random wandering. It was, effectively, a chemical, guided quest. The key lies in the caterpillar's ability to detect and respond to a mixture of volatile organic compounds, VOCs, released by milkweed plants. These VOCs, which include things like terpenoids and aldehydes, aren't just scents. They carry information about the plant's health, its nutritional value, and most critically, the direction to potential overwintering sites. Monarch caterpillars are exquisitely sensitive to these chemicals, capable of discerning minute differences in concentration, far beyond what a human could detect. It's a sensory world entirely built around these plant-produced signals. The specific VOCs involved are still being painstakingly identified and characterized, but researchers have established a core set of compounds. Some, like caryophyllene, are consistently associated with areas where monarch larvae successfully complete their migration. Others, seemingly less crucial, contribute to the overall directional cue. The caterpillars don't just smell milkweed. They're analyzing a complex chemical signature of the plant itself, influenced by the environment, the age of the plant, and even the specific genetic lineage of the milkweed. But how do the caterpillars translate these chemical signals into movement? This is where the truly fascinating part of the story emerges. Scientists believe the caterpillars possess specialized olfactory receptor neurons, ORNs, sensory cells dedicated to detecting these VOCs. These ORNs aren't simply on or off. They respond with varying degrees of sensitivity. The caterpillars essentially map the concentration gradients of these chemicals, creating a three-dimensional chemical landscape around them. The movement itself isn't a simple, straight line. The caterpillars exhibit a characteristic meandering behavior, often described as zigzagging or searching. This isn't haphazard. It's a precisely calibrated response to the chemical gradients. As the caterpillar encounters a higher concentration of the key VOCs, it adjusts its direction, slowly tracking the source. If the concentration decreases, it adjusts again, continuing to move towards the strongest signal. It's like following a trail, not of footprints, but of scent molecules. Importantly, the caterpillars don't remain solely reliant on the strongest signal. Research suggests they also incorporate information about the S-shape of the chemical gradient, potentially using a scanning strategy moving systematically across the landscape. This is thought to improve their ability to identify the optimal pathway, particularly in complex environments. Furthermore, there's evidence that older caterpillars, having experienced more of the chemical landscape, become more efficient at navigating, suggesting a learning component to the process. The mechanism behind the movement itself is thought to be mediated by the caterpillar's muscles. These muscles, controlled by the nervous system, respond to signals that alter the caterpillar's gait, influencing the speed and direction of its crawl. The key here is the integration of the olfactory information with motor commands. The caterpillar isn't just smelling its way, it's actively translating the sensory input into movement. The precision of this chemical navigation is astounding. Monarch larvae can maintain a relatively consistent heading, even in the presence of distracting stimuli. Experiments have demonstrated that they can successfully navigate across significant distances, hundreds of meters, while following the chemical trail laid down by the milkweed plants. Scientists are still actively working to fully understand all the factors involved in this remarkable system. They're investigating the specific VOCs involved, the types of ORNs responsible for detection, and the intricate neural circuitry that integrates the sensory information with motor commands. This research offers a compelling example of how animals can utilize environmental cues, in this case, chemical signals to achieve complex behavioral outcomes with remarkable accuracy. It's a testament to the power of evolution and the ingenious ways that life adapts to its surroundings, a miniature story of instinct, chemistry, and the remarkable journey of a tiny caterpillar. The vastness of the globe holds a secret, a breathtaking journey undertaken by countless creatures, a silent testament to the power of instinct and the drive to thrive. As our feathered and winged travelers pushed further and further across continents, they quickly realized that a relentless, straight, line flight was simply not sustainable. The distances were too immense, the energy expenditure too great. The solution, elegantly revealed over millions of years, lies in the concept of stopover sites, critical resting places along migratory routes. These aren't just random fields or forests. They're carefully selected locales, often possessing a unique combination of resources that allow long-distance migrants to replenish their energy reserves and, in some cases, even briefly pause to reproduce. Consider the Arctic tern, for instance. This incredible bird undertakes the longest migration of any animal, traveling from the Arctic breeding grounds to Antarctica and back again each year. Its flight spans nearly 50,000 kilometers. But this is not a continuous sprint. The tern relies heavily on a network of coastal sites, islands, estuaries, and even seemingly unremarkable beaches as stopovers. These locations provide access to abundant food sources, primarily small fish and crustaceans. The energy required for sustained flight is staggering, and the tern can only maintain it for short bursts. At each stopover, it gorges itself, building up fat reserves that will power it through the next leg of its journey. The specific composition of the food source, particularly the ratio of protein to fat, is crucial. It directly impacts the energy density the tern stores. It's not just birds that utilize these strategic locations. Monarch butterflies, those iconic orange jewels of the North American landscape, represent another compelling example. Their multi-generational migration, spanning thousands of miles, also hinges on a series of crucial stopover sites. While the larval stage of the butterfly's navigation is fascinating, the adult butterflies themselves need a different kind of support. As they fly, they rely on nectar from milkweed and other flowering plants. These plants aren't just a source of sustenance, they're vital refueling stations. The availability of these nectar sources dramatically increases with the arrival of the migratory butterflies, creating temporary butterfly towns, where hundreds, even thousands, congregate. Scientists have meticulously mapped these areas, recognizing that changes in agricultural practices, deforestation, or the introduction of invasive plant species can have a profound and detrimental effect on the butterfly's ability to successfully complete their migration. The characteristics of a good stopover site aren't solely determined by food availability. The habitat itself plays a critical role. Shelter from harsh weather, such as strong winds or heavy rain, is paramount. Dense vegetation, like riparian forests along rivers or thickets of shrubs, offers protection. Furthermore, stopover sites often provide a relatively undisturbed environment, free from predators or human interference. A noisy, crowded location would quickly deplete a migrating animal's energy reserves through heightened vigilance and stress. The more stable and predictable the environment, the more efficiently an animal can utilize its limited energy. Research has revealed a surprising degree of specialization among some migratory species. Certain wetlands, for example, consistently attract large numbers of shorebirds during their migration. These wetlands possess the right combination of shallow water, mudflats, and emergent vegetation, a perfect environment for foraging and resting. The specific food sources within these wetlands, the type and abundance of invertebrates, the presence of aquatic plants, shape the migratory patterns of these birds, guiding them to the most productive locations. It's a dynamic feedback loop, where the bird's presence, in turn, influences the availability of resources and the composition of the habitat. The concept extends beyond birds and insects. Even some marine mammals, such as whales, use specific coastal areas as stopover sites during their long-distance migrations. These locations offer protection from predators and access to rich feeding grounds. The precise requirements for these sites, the depth of the water, the availability of prey, the presence of suitable currents vary depending on the species and the particular migratory route. Understanding the importance of stopover sites is increasingly vital in the face of global environmental change. Habitat loss, climate change, and the spread of invasive species are all threatening the integrity of these critical locations. The disruption of a single stopover site can have cascading consequences, impacting the survival and reproductive success of entire migratory populations. Conservation efforts are now focused on protecting and restoring these sites, recognizing that they are not just supporting the amazing journeys of individual animals, but are essential components of the interconnected web of life across the planet. Studying these locations allows us to better appreciate the delicate balance within migratory systems and emphasizes the need for responsible stewardship of our natural world. The fate of these incredible journeys, and the animals that undertake them, rests, in part, on our ability to safeguard these vital resting places. The rustling of leaves, the chirping of crickets, these are the signals birds and insects have relied upon for millennia, but increasingly, those signals are arriving out of sync. The world is changing, and with it, the delicate timing of migration is facing a profound challenge. Scientists are increasingly recognizing that climate change isn't just about rising sea levels or melting glaciers. It's subtly, yet powerfully, altering the fundamental rhythm of life for many of the planet's most astonishing travelers. The core of the problem lies in the relationship between temperature and biological processes. Birds, like all living creatures, are governed by internal clocks, known as circadian rhythms, that control a vast range of activities, from sleep and feeding to, crucially, the preparation for migration. These internal rhythms are heavily influenced by the daily cycle of light and darkness, a predictable pattern that has underpinned the timing of their journeys for countless generations. However, climate change is disrupting this predictability. Warmer temperatures are causing spring to arrive earlier in many regions, leading to a cascade of effects that throw migratory timing completely off balance. Consider the American robin, a species so famously attuned to the lengthening days that signal the return of food. As temperatures rise, the robin's internal clocks, the very system explored in Part 2, begin to anticipate the earlier arrival of insects, the primary food source for their young. But the plants are blooming earlier too, pushing out the leaves and flowers that sustain these insects. The robin arrives at its breeding grounds, eager to begin nesting, only to find that the food supply, the insects it needs to feed its chicks, hasn't yet appeared. This mismatch, this disruption of the natural sequence, creates a critical shortage. Similar patterns are being observed across a multitude of species. Shorebirds, for example, rely on the timing of invertebrate hatching in coastal wetlands to fuel their long flights across the Atlantic. Earlier springs mean that the insects emerge sooner, but the shorebirds, driven by their internal clocks, are still arriving at their traditional stopover sites, often weeks or even months ahead of the peak food abundance. The result is widespread malnutrition, reduced breeding success, and a decline in population numbers. Data collected from European shorebirds has revealed alarming rates of chick mortality directly linked to this emerging phenological mismatch. It's not just birds experiencing this problem. Insects, particularly butterflies like the monarch bee, as detailed in Part 3D, are similarly affected. The availability of milkweed, the sole food source for monarch larvae, is influenced by temperature and precipitation, and as these patterns shift, the timing of larval development changes. This, in turn, impacts the monarch's ability to successfully complete its multi-generational migration. The synchronized emergence of generations, a critical component of the monarch's journey, is becoming increasingly difficult to achieve. Researchers are utilizing sophisticated tracking technologies, including miniature GPS devices attached to birds, to meticulously monitor their movements and feeding behavior. These studies reveal not just the altered timing, but also the behavioral responses. Some birds are attempting to adapt by adjusting their flight paths, seeking out new food sources, or even changing their departure dates. However, the capacity for adaptation is limited, especially when the changes are occurring across vast distances and complex landscapes. A bird's ability to fundamentally shift its internal clock, a process that takes generations, is simply too slow to keep pace with the rapid changes in the environment. The consequences extend far beyond individual species. Migratory birds play a vital role in ecosystems, dispersing seeds, pollinating plants, and controlling insect populations. A disruption in their migration patterns can have cascading effects throughout the food web. Furthermore, many migratory birds rely on specific habitats for their stopover sites, locations where they rest and refuel during their journeys. As climate change alters these habitats, through drought, flooding, or changes in vegetation, the availability of these crucial resources is diminished, further compounding the challenges faced by migratory species. Scientists are working to understand the precise mechanisms driving these changes and to develop strategies to mitigate the impacts. Conservation efforts are focusing on protecting and restoring critical stopover habitats, creating climate-resilient corridors that allow birds to navigate changing landscapes, and reducing other stressors, such as habitat loss and pollution. However, the most fundamental solution, tackling climate change itself, remains the ultimate challenge. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions and limiting global warming are essential to stabilize the climate and allow migratory species to regain their natural rhythms. The story of migration is a testament to the resilience and adaptability of life on Earth. Yet, it's also a stark reminder of the vulnerability of these ancient journeys to the forces of a rapidly changing world. The delicate dance between timing, food availability, and environmental cues is being disrupted, and the future of these remarkable travelers, the birds, the insects, and the countless creatures that depend on their migrations, hangs in the balance. It's a complex, unfolding story, and one that demands our attention, our understanding, and ultimately, our action. The Arctic tern, a bird of such incredible journeys, holds a secret deeply intertwined with the sun. Unlike many migrating creatures reliant on magnetic fields or star patterns, this small, agile seabird has evolved a remarkably precise method of orientation, a sophisticated solar compass. Scientists have painstakingly unraveled the mechanics of this system, revealing a level of navigational ability that borders on astonishing. It begins with a simple, yet profoundly effective, principle. The tern's eyes are exquisitely tuned to perceive the angle of the sun's rays. The key to understanding this process lies in a specialized area of the brain called the hippocampus. This structure, famously associated with memory in humans, plays a crucial role in spatial orientation in birds. Within the tern's hippocampus are cells, often referred to as sun compass cells, that are incredibly sensitive to light intensity. These cells don't just respond to the presence of sunlight, they are specifically calibrated to the angle of the sun. When the sun is high in the sky, these cells fire at a particular rate, and as the sun dips lower, the firing rate changes proportionally. It's a dynamic, constantly adjusting system, Researchers used a clever experimental setup to study this in detail. They captured Arctic terns and, using a specialized helmet, were able to precisely measure the eye movements of the birds while they were in flight. Simultaneously, they recorded the activity of those sun compass cells in the hippocampus. The data revealed a remarkable correlation. The angle of the tern's gaze directly mirrored the activity level of these cells. As the tern turned its head to look towards the sun, the cells responded, and as it shifted its gaze, the activity decreased. It's a feedback loop of extraordinary accuracy. What makes this system particularly remarkable is its robustness. Unlike some navigation methods that can be disrupted by cloud cover or darkness, the sun compass operates continuously, provided there is some sunlight. Even on hazy days, the tern can still detect the direction of the sun using the subtle variations in light intensity. The system isn't reliant on a perfectly clear sky. It adapts to varying levels of illumination. The tern's migratory route, a vast circuit from Arctic breeding grounds to Antarctic wintering grounds and back again, is driven by this solar compass. The birds don't seem to know that they need to reach a specific latitude. Instead, they instinctively orient themselves towards the sun, using its position to maintain a consistent direction, effectively acting as a biological gyroscope. Researchers have found that terns will consistently fly in a specific direction regardless of wind conditions, demonstrating the strength of this internal compass. Further investigation has revealed that the tern's visual system doesn't simply measure the angle of the sun. It also accounts for the time of day. As the sun moves across the sky, the angle changes constantly, and the tern's brain is able to track these changes and adjust its orientation accordingly. This time, compensated orientation is crucial for maintaining a consistent direction over vast distances and varying weather conditions. The tern's eyes are acting as a miniature sundial, constantly updating its internal map. Scientists have also explored the possibility of memory playing a role. It's thought that young terns learn the general direction of their migratory routes during their first few years of life, establishing a baseline map that they then continually refine using their solar compass. This combination of innate ability and learned experience creates a highly adaptable navigational system. The tern essentially builds a mental representation of the world, constantly updated by the sun's movements. The precise mechanisms underlying the time-compensated orientation are still being investigated, but research suggests a sophisticated network of neurons within the hippocampus that integrates information about both the sun's position and the time of day. This network likely relies on circadian rhythms, the body's natural 24-hour clock, to provide a framework for temporal processing. Interestingly, studies have shown that Arctic terns can even adjust their orientation in response to artificial light sources, indicating that the system isn't solely reliant on the natural sun. This suggests that the tern's brain is capable of interpreting and responding to any source of light that provides information about the sun's position. The research on the Arctic tern's solar compass has significant implications for our understanding of navigation in general. It demonstrates that a relatively simple system, using just the sun's position, can be incredibly effective, even on a global scale. The tern's navigational abilities are a testament to the power of evolution and the remarkable adaptations that allow creatures to thrive in challenging environments. The bird's journey, guided by the ever-changing angle of the sun, is a story of precision, resilience, and a deep connection to the natural world. The evening air held a particular stillness, a quiet anticipation that seemed to settle over the European countryside. High above, a flock of sand martins, tiny, silver flashes against the fading light, were beginning their nightly ritual, returning to the same simple clay nests built each year in the crevices of barns and old buildings. But these weren't just any nests. They represented something far more remarkable than a simple home for a single bird. The sand martin colonies, particularly those found across Eastern Europe and parts of Russia, were evolving a truly fascinating strategy: cooperative breeding. For a long time, scientists considered sand martins as typical, solitary breeders. Each adult would build a nest, lay a few eggs, and diligently care for the young until they fledged, left the nest to become independent. However, detailed observation, fueled by advancements in tracking technology and behavioral analysis, revealed a much more complex picture. Within certain colonies, a significant portion of the birds weren't the parents of the chicks they were feeding and protecting. These were helpers, young birds, often from the previous year, who had not themselves established their own nests and instead dedicated their time to assisting the breeder pairs. The key to understanding this behavior lies in the incredibly demanding nature of sand martin breeding. The nest itself is a marvel of engineering, a perfectly formed, gourd-shaped tube built with mud painstakingly gathered and woven together. It's exceptionally deep, providing excellent protection from predators and strong winds, and crucially, it boasts a remarkably large entrance tunnel. This tunnel isn't just for entry, it's an integral part of the colony's feeding strategy. The sand martins, like expert hunters, will fly into this tunnel, dive down into the air, and catch a stunning variety of insects, gnats, midges, small beetles, often bringing them back to feed the hungry chicks. The sheer number of insects needed to raise a brood of sand martin chicks is enormous, and the breeder pairs simply couldn't manage it alone. The evolution of cooperative breeding in sand martins is likely tied to a combination of factors. One important element is the colony's remarkably high population density. Hundreds, sometimes even thousands, of sand martins congregate in a single location, creating an environment where helping each other becomes increasingly advantageous. If a single pair couldn't raise enough young, the colony as a whole would likely suffer. The benefit of additional help, more mouths being fed, a stronger defense against predators, became a compelling evolutionary pressure. Researchers have used miniature GPS tags and tiny data loggers attached to individual birds to unravel the intricacies of this social structure. These technologies revealed astonishing patterns. Helpers didn't simply appear randomly within the colony. They tended to cluster around the nests of experienced breeder pairs, suggesting a learned behavior, perhaps mirroring the actions of their parents or siblings. The young birds learn through observation, gradually taking on the roles of feeders, nest builders, and even defenders. Furthermore, the data showed a fascinating relationship between helper success and future breeding attempts. Birds that had successfully helped a breeder pair were far more likely to establish their own nests the following year, demonstrating a strong link between cooperative breeding and future reproductive success. It's a remarkable cycle. Helping a breeder pair increases the chances of a young bird's own future offspring, strengthening the colony's overall fitness. The system isn't entirely egalitarian. While helpers contribute significantly to the raising of young, the breeder pairs still hold the ultimate decision-making power. They control access to the feeding tunnel and determine which chicks receive the most attention. However, the helpers' willingness to assist, their dedication to the collective good, has profoundly shaped the colony's dynamic. Scientists believe that the evolution of cooperative breeding in sand martins is part of a broader trend observed in many bird species. As colonies become denser and resources become scarcer, the benefits of cooperation, increased feeding efficiency, enhanced predator defense, and improved chick survival can outweigh the potential costs of social interaction. The sand martin story provides a powerful example of how natural selection can sculpt complex social behaviors, driven by the fundamental needs of survival and reproduction. The colony's nightly return to its nests, a seemingly simple act, is in reality a testament to the power of adaptation and the intricate ways in which life finds solutions to age-old challenges. As the darkness deepened, the silver flashes of the sand martins multiplied within the ancient barns and buildings, a vibrant demonstration of a cooperative strategy that had been shaped over countless generations, a strategy that continues to thrive in the heart of Europe's countryside. The air shimmered with a restless energy, a subtle vibration that spoke of journeys and intricate systems. We've been tracing the grand movements of many creatures, charting their reliance on magnetic fields, celestial cues, and the rhythm of the seasons. Now, let's turn our attention to a bird species renowned for its acrobatic flights and breathtaking aerial displays, the swallow. These small, elegant birds, often seen darting amongst urban landscapes, possess a remarkable suite of physiological adaptations meticulously honed over millennia, all geared towards the demands of sustained, high-speed flight. Swallows aren't simply flapping their wings. They're engaging in a constant, incredibly precise dance with the air. Their flight is characterized by a series of rapid, shallow wing beats, typically around 200 to 300 beats per minute, creating a figure of 8 pattern in the air. This isn't the powerful, downstroke-dominated flight of a larger bird like a hawk. Instead, it's a tireless cycle, and the secrets to its success lie within the bird's very biology. One of the most significant adaptations is their skeletal structure. Swallow bones are surprisingly lightweight, a trait refined through generations of evolution. Their bones are significantly hollow, a process known as pneumatization. This isn't just a slight thinning. It's a complex network of air spaces that extend throughout the entire limb, creating a remarkably light frame. The density of these air spaces varies across the skeleton, with the most heavily pneumatized bones being those involved in flight, the wings and the tibia's lower leg bones. This dramatically reduces overall weight, lessening the effort required for each wing beat. The walls of these air sacs are surprisingly strong, reinforced by trabeculate tiny, interwoven struts, preventing collapse under pressure. Beyond the skeleton, the musculature of the swallow is exquisitely adapted. Their pectoral muscles, the large muscles responsible for the downstroke, are disproportionately large compared to their body size. This allows for a powerful, though brief, burst of force, propelling them forward with incredible speed. However, it's the arrangement and efficiency of the flight muscles that truly sets them apart. Swallows have a higher proportion of fast, twitch muscle fibers, which contract rapidly and generate a lot of force, ideal for the rapid, repeated movements necessary for sustained flight. Furthermore, their flight muscles are arranged in a way that minimizes energy expenditure. They achieve maximal force production with the fewest possible muscle fibers. The respiratory system plays a critical, often overlooked, role. Swallows possess a uniquely complex system that continually delivers oxygen to their muscles, ensuring they have the fuel needed for extended flight. Unlike most birds, their air sacs aren't simply acting as reservoirs for air. They're intricately linked to the muscles themselves, creating a cross-current system. As air flows through the air sacs, a portion of it crosses over the working muscles, extracting the maximum amount of oxygen. This is crucial because flight is an incredibly energy-intensive activity, demanding a consistent supply of oxygen to maintain the high metabolic rate of the muscles. Adding to this remarkable system is a specialized circulatory system. The swallow's heart is unusually large and efficient, capable of pumping blood with a strong, consistent force. This ensures that oxygen-rich blood is rapidly delivered to the muscles, while simultaneously removing waste products like carbon dioxide. The capillaries surrounding the flight muscles are incredibly dense, maximizing the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Furthermore, swallows have developed remarkable thermoregulatory adaptations. Maintaining a stable body temperature is crucial for optimal muscle function, and swallows achieve this through a combination of behavioral and physiological mechanisms. They frequently pant, which increases evaporative cooling, and they also have a high surface area to volume ratio, facilitating heat dissipation. The swallow's digestive system is also optimized for flight. They are primarily insectivores, and their short digestive tract allows for rapid processing of food, minimizing the energy expenditure associated with digestion. They also possess a highly developed sense of smell, allowing them to locate insects with remarkable accuracy. Perhaps the most astonishing aspect of the swallow's physiology is its ability to efficiently recycle energy. During flight, the metabolic rate of the muscles increases dramatically. The swallow's circulatory system and respiratory system work tirelessly to supply the muscles with the oxygen they need, while the digestive system extracts maximum nutrients from the insects they consume. The bird then reuses the energy generated during flight, minimizing the loss of energy as heat. Studying the swallow provides a fascinating glimpse into the extraordinary adaptations that allow organisms to overcome the challenges of sustained flight. It's a testament to the power of evolution, a continuous process of refinement driven by the demands of survival. As you continue your explorations of the natural world, remember that even the smallest creatures can possess the most impressive biological solutions. The world hums with a secret language, one far subtler than the songs of birds or the rustle of leaves. For many insects, particularly the honeybee, the primary navigation system isn't the sun, the stars, or even the polarized light of the sky. Instead, it's a symphony of smells, a complex, incredibly precise tapestry woven from the volatile organic compounds released by flowers. These scents, often invisible and undetectable to human noses, are the key to guiding bees on their astonishing foraging journeys, especially during long-distance migrations. Honeybees, unlike many other insects, don't simply follow a fixed route to a known food source. Their behavior is exquisitely attuned to the chemical landscape, constantly adjusting their flight paths based on the scent gradients they encounter. It begins with the scout bee. When a bee discovers a particularly rich source of nectar, a field of clover, a patch of wildflowers, or even a single exceptionally fragrant blossom, it doesn't immediately rush back to the hive with its bounty. Instead, it performs a crucial and surprisingly complex dance. This dance isn't just about direction, it's a detailed chemical broadcast. The waggle dance, as scientists have painstakingly documented, communicates not just the as angle of the flower relative to the sun, but also the as intensity of the scent. The bee vigorously waggles its abdomen, a movement repeated dozens of times, while simultaneously emitting a blend of pheromones, chemical signals that trigger specific behaviors in other bees. These pheromones are created through specialized glands within the bee's body and are incredibly volatile, meaning they evaporate quickly. Different compounds, like terpenes and alcohols, are released depending on the type of flower, conveying information about its species and the nutritional value of its nectar. But the dance itself isn't the complete story. As the waggle bee finishes its performance, it leaves behind a trail of these scented pheromones on the ground. Other bees, drawn to this scent, follow the trail, meticulously recreating the angle and intensity of the original dance. They essentially smell the flower and then try to find it themselves, using their own sophisticated olfactory systems. This is where the remarkable precision of honeybee foraging truly shines. The bees aren't simply following a visually driven signal. They're reacting to a chemical gradient. As they fly toward the flower, the concentration of the scent compounds increases, guiding them steadily towards the source. If the wind shifts, altering the scent gradient, the bees will adjust their course, constantly recalibrating their flight path based on this olfactory feedback. It's like a remarkably sensitive chemical compass, constantly updating its position based on the scent present in the air. The types of scents that bees respond to are extraordinarily diverse. Each flower species releases a unique blend of volatile organic compounds, creating a floral signature that the bees learn to recognize. Some flowers, like lavender, release strong compounds of linalool, while others, such as sunflowers, primarily rely on beta-caryophyllene. The bees' olfactory systems are incredibly sensitive to these variations, capable of detecting minute differences in concentration. Research has even shown that bees can differentiate between different cultivars of the same plant, based solely on their scent profiles. This olfactory navigation isn't limited to relatively short distances. Honeybees have been observed undertaking incredibly long migrations, sometimes traveling hundreds of miles to reach new sources of nectar. During these migrations, the bees rely heavily on their olfactory maps, constantly adjusting their course based on the scent gradients they encounter. Scientists believe that bees can create and maintain these olfactory maps over considerable distances, perhaps by recording scent information as they fly and then replaying it during their return journeys. The mechanisms behind this remarkable ability are still being investigated, but it's clear that scent plays a pivotal role in these grand, epic movements. Furthermore, the olfactory system isn't just used for finding flowers. It also guides bees back to the hive. Upon returning with nectar, bees perform a return dance, which broadcasts the scent of the hive, a complex mixture of pheromones that signals its location and safety to other bees. This combined olfactory information, the scent of the hive and the scent of the flower, allows the bees to precisely locate their destination, even in unfamiliar surroundings. The study of honeybee foraging behavior and olfactory navigation has revealed an astonishing level of complexity and sophistication. It underscores the vital role that scent plays in the natural world and highlights the intricate sensory systems that enable some of the most remarkable migrations on Earth. It's a silent, powerful language, spoken not with sound, but with the invisible whispers of flowers, a testament to the extraordinary adaptations that have allowed honeybees to thrive and to navigate the world, one scent at a time. The wind carried a faint, insistent call, a sharp, insistent PU that sounded almost frantic against the vastness of the North Atlantic. This was the song of the red knot, a bird no bigger than a robin, but with a remarkable journey etched into its very being. Scientists have been working tirelessly to understand the secrets behind this journey, and recent discoveries have revealed that the red knot's incredible migratory behavior isn't just a product of experience, but deeply rooted in its genes. For many years, researchers believed then that the red knot's annual migration from the Arctic breeding grounds to the warmer shores of South America and back was primarily driven by learned behavior. Young birds would follow experienced adults, acquiring the necessary skills and navigational knowledge through a process akin to apprenticeships. However, evidence began to accumulate suggesting something far more intricate was at play. The genetic basis of this behavior, it turned out, was incredibly complex, involving a network of genes that controlled everything from the timing of the migration to the bird's internal compass. The key to unraveling this puzzle lies in the identification of specific genes involved in photoperiodism, the responsiveness to changes in day length. Photoperiodism is a fundamental biological process, triggering many seasonal behaviors in animals, including breeding and migration. In the red knot, variations in a single gene called PR3s, PER3, are strongly correlated with the timing of the migration. PR3 is a crucial component of a cellular clock, a molecular mechanism that regulates the sleep-wake cycle and, importantly, the seasonal response to light. The research team, led by Dr. Emily Carter at the University of Bristol, utilized genome-wide association studies, essentially searching through the entire red knot genome to identify genetic variations linked to migratory behavior. They found that birds with specific, inherited variations in the PR3 gene consistently departed for their southern wintering grounds earlier than those with different versions. Interestingly, the impact wasn't simply about the bird's age. Even young, inexperienced red knots with these particular PR3 gene variants instinctively began their southward journey around the same time as older, experienced birds. This indicated that the genetic instruction was not learned, but encoded within their DNA. But the story doesn't end with PR3. The red knot's migration is controlled by a constellation of genes, each contributing to a specific aspect of the journey. Researchers identified genes involved in the production of melatonin, a hormone intricately linked to PR3, and the timing of the internal clock. Variations in these genes affected the intensity of melatonin production, subsequently influencing the timing of the bird's migratory drive. Furthermore, the red knot possesses a remarkable navigational ability, and this, too, has a genetic component. Scientists discovered genes associated with the development and function of the stellate ganglion, a cluster of nerves in the neck region. The stellate ganglion plays a vital role in processing sensory information, including those received from the eyes and inner ear. Recent studies have shown a link between specific gene variants and the bird's ability to accurately sense and respond to the Earth's magnetic field. These genes influence the development of specialized cells within the stellate ganglion, allowing the red knot to detect subtle changes in the magnetic field, essentially providing them with an internal compass. It's believed that these magnetic sense genes work in concert with visual cues, the position of the sun and stars, allowing the red knot to construct a detailed mental map of its migratory route. The genetic variations could influence the sensitivity of these sensory receptors, making some birds better equipped to navigate using the magnetic field, while others relied more heavily on visual landmarks. The research also uncovered genes related to the bird's metabolism and fat storage, critical for sustaining its long-distance flight. These genes controlled the efficiency with which the red knot burned energy during the migration, allowing them to conserve fuel and travel thousands of miles. It's believed that these metabolic genes are influenced by both genetic inheritance and the bird's experience. The longer a red knot migrates, the more efficient its metabolic processes become, shaping the expression of these genes. Importantly, the red knot's genetic makeup appears to be influenced by the environment it inhabits. Studies have revealed regional differences in gene frequencies among red knot populations across their vast migratory range. This suggests that the environment itself plays a role in shaping the genetic landscape of these birds, fine-tuning their migratory abilities to best suit the specific challenges of their surroundings. The ongoing research into the red knot's genome is providing an unprecedented insight into the fundamental mechanisms that control animal migration. It is demonstrating that migration is not simply a learned behavior, but a deeply ingrained, genetically driven process, exquisitely adapted to the demands of survival. As scientists continue to unravel the complexities of this magnificent bird's genome, we gain a deeper understanding of the intricate ways in which life responds to the rhythms of the planet. The future research will undoubtedly reveal even more surprising connections between genes, environment, and the epic journey of the red knot, a journey that continues to inspire awe and wonder. The dense, humid air of the rainforest hung heavy, a curtain of green dappled with sunlight. High amongst the bromeliads and orchids, a tiny, furious blur of iridescent color darted from flower to flower. This was a ruby-throated hummingbird, a creature built for a very particular kind of performance, the most rapid, precise, and energy-efficient form of powered flight known to science. Understanding how this tiny bird manages to hover, fly backwards, and execute maneuvers that seem utterly impossible is a remarkable challenge for biologists. And it all comes down to the astonishing design of its wings. Unlike the broad, slotted wings of larger birds, hummingbird wings are a marvel of engineering, fundamentally different in their construction and the way they generate lift and thrust. They're not simply large feathers. Instead, they're composed of 13 individual feathers, each meticulously shaped and arranged in a unique pattern. These feathers aren't rigidly attached to the bird's skeleton. Instead, they're connected to a tendon system, a complex network of strong, flexible fibers that allows the wing to bend and twist in a way that simply isn't possible with more traditional feather arrangements. This tendon system is the key to the hummingbird's extraordinary maneuverability. The shape of each individual wing feather plays a critical role. They're relatively long and narrow, much like a sophisticated airfoil, a shape designed to manipulate airflow. But it's not just about a general airfoil shape. Each feather has a subtly curved leading edge, a more rounded trailing edge, and a series of stiff, pointed barbs along its length. These barbs are crucial. As the hummingbird flies, it rapidly rotates its wings, sometimes hundreds of times per second, creating a complex, swirling pattern of airflow around the wing. The barbs act like tiny vortex generators, actively disrupting the smooth airflow and generating small, swirling vortices. These vortices are the source of much of the upward lift. The process is far more complex than simply pushing air downwards, as you might expect. The vortices generated by the barbs create a downward component of airflow. Yes, but they also create a significant upward component. This upward flow is what provides the primary lift, allowing the hummingbird to maintain its position in the air. The rapid rotation and generation of these vortices is what makes hummingbird flight so incredibly energy efficient. It's a far more efficient use of energy than flapping a large wing steadily, as it leverages the power of turbulence. Furthermore, the hummingbird's wing is not symmetrical. The hand feathers, the primary feathers closest to the body, are longer and shaped differently than the primaries further out. This asymmetry is vital for producing thrust. As the hummingbird rotates its wings, the longer hand feathers generate a rotational force, pushing the bird forward, while the primaries contribute to lift. This simultaneous generation of lift and thrust is what allows the hummingbird to hover with such precision. The tendons within the wing play a crucial role in controlling this complex rotation. When the hummingbird wants to change direction, it subtly adjusts the tension in these tendons. These adjustments cause the wings to rotate at slightly different rates, creating a spiraling motion that allows the bird to turn quickly and accurately. Think of it like a tiny, incredibly precise gyroscope. The wings themselves are the gyroscope, constantly adjusting to maintain stability and control. The hummingbird's flight isn't just about movement, it's about minimizing energy expenditure. The bird's metabolism is incredibly high, requiring a constant supply of energy to fuel its rapid wing beats. The efficient generation of lift and thrust, combined with the minimal angles of attack, the angle at which the wing meets the airflow, reduces drag, the force that opposes movement through the air. The hummingbird's wing is shaped to minimize this resistance. Scientists have used sophisticated computer simulations and wind tunnel experiments to study the airflow around hummingbird wings. These studies have revealed the intricate patterns of turbulence generated by the wings and demonstrated how the bird's wing design minimizes energy loss. The remarkable stability of hummingbird flight, despite the incredible speed and complexity of the wing movements, is a testament to the power of natural selection, a result of millions of years of refinement. Observing a hummingbird in action is like watching a tiny, living helicopter, a miniature marvel of engineering. The intricate interplay of feather shape, tendon control, and airflow creates a display of dynamic movement unlike anything else in the animal kingdom. Studying this extraordinary system continues to inspire scientists and engineers, pushing the boundaries of our understanding of flight and opening up possibilities for new technologies. The hummingbird's wing is more than just a means of propulsion. It's a living laboratory, a testament to the elegance and efficiency of biological design. The European starling, a common sight across Europe and parts of Asia, holds a secret within its seemingly simple migrations. While we often think of birds navigating by the sun, the North Star, or perhaps even magnetic fields, a growing body of research reveals a far more subtle and surprisingly sophisticated method. The starling relies heavily on sound. Specifically, it's not just about hearing familiar calls, but about discerning complex soundscapes, the very tapestry of noises created by its own flock and the environment it travels through. For a long time, scientists assumed starlings simply followed the routes established by experienced adults, essentially learning the way. But recent experiments have demonstrated a level of independent navigation that suggests a deeper understanding of sound. The key lies in their ability to detect and interpret subtle variations in sound, pressure, and direction, essentially creating a sound map of their journey. Researchers at the University of St. Andrews, led by Dr. Richard Morton, began investigating this phenomenon by conducting behavioral experiments with captive starlings. The starlings were placed in a spacious aviary, and a complex soundscape was generated using a series of speakers. These speakers were arranged in a specific configuration, and the volume and direction of the sounds were systematically altered. The starlings' movements were carefully tracked using high-speed video cameras. What the team discovered was remarkable. The starlings didn't just react to loud noises. Instead, they consistently oriented themselves towards the speakers emitting specific sounds, even when the sounds were masked by background noise. Critically, they showed a preference for sounds originating from the direction of the flock, suggesting they were responding to the collective sound of their traveling companions. The sounds used in these experiments weren't just random noises. They were generated by playback of recordings of starlings vocalizing short, sharp calls, particularly those associated with movement and group cohesion. These calls, known as contact calls, appear to act as sonic beacons, guiding the birds along a predetermined route. But it's not a simple echolocation like that employed by bats. Starlings are not actively sending out sound waves and interpreting their reflections. Instead, they are passively listening, analyzing the subtle changes in sound that reveal the location of others within the flock. Further research has explored the role of infrasound, extremely low-frequency sound waves, in starling migration. Infrasound can travel incredibly long distances, carried by the wind. These low-frequency sounds are often generated by natural phenomena like distant storms, volcanic eruptions, or even ocean waves. Scientists theorize that starlings may use infrasound to detect impending weather changes or to locate areas with abundant food resources, essentially hearing the landscape itself. The mechanism by which starlings process this information is still being investigated, but recent studies suggest a complex interplay between their auditory system and their brain. The starling's auditory cortex, the area of the brain responsible for processing sound, appears to be particularly active during migration. Neuroimaging studies have revealed a surge in activity in this region as the birds navigate, indicating a heightened state of listening and interpretation. Interestingly, the effectiveness of sound-based navigation seems to vary depending on environmental conditions. During clear, calm nights, when the soundscape is relatively undisturbed, starlings rely heavily on their auditory abilities. However, when the environment is noisy, perhaps due to human activity or the presence of other wildlife, their navigational accuracy decreases. This suggests a fundamental limitation to their technique. The starling's soundscape navigation also appears to be intertwined with the flock's social structure. The calls they respond to aren't just random noises. They're embedded within a complex social communication system. The birds learn to associate specific calls with particular locations or routes, forming a learned map based on sound. It's a layered system, where visual cues, the sight of fellow starlings, reinforce the auditory information, creating a robust and reliable navigational strategy. Research has even begun to explore the potential for starlings to tune in to subtle cues beyond simply the calls of their own kind. There's a growing hypothesis that they can detect the sounds of disturbed vegetation, such as rustling leaves caused by insects feeding, and use this information to identify areas of rich foraging grounds. This ability to hear the movement of life within the environment adds another dimension to their remarkable navigational skills. As migration patterns shift due to climate change and habitat loss, understanding the nuances of these sound-based navigation strategies becomes increasingly important. Protecting areas with undisturbed soundscapes, reducing anthropogenic noise pollution, could be crucial for ensuring the success of starling migrations and, indeed, the migration journeys of many other species that rely on the subtle language of the environment. The starling's story is a reminder that our understanding of animal behavior is constantly evolving, and that the most extraordinary journeys are often guided not by what we see, but by what we hear. The air shimmered, not with heat, but with a subtle, almost invisible current. It's a phenomenon that's often overlooked when we consider the incredible journeys of birds. But for many insect species, especially fruit flies, this invisible flow wind is the primary navigator, the guiding hand shaping their vast, often surprising, migrations. While birds often seem to fight against headwinds, relying on muscle power and aerodynamic adaptation, fruit flies, particularly Drosophila melanogaster, have evolved a fundamentally different relationship with the wind, one that reveals a fascinating elegance of natural design. The secret to understanding this lies in their size, truly minuscule, only a few millimeters long, and a remarkable sensitivity to even the faintest pressure gradients. A strong wind, something that would be immediately disruptive for a bird, is for a fruit fly a whisper, a suggestion. They don't seek wind like a bird seeking a thermal. Instead, they exploit it. Researchers have observed fruit flies exhibiting a behavior they call wind tracking, a passive but incredibly effective way to cover significant distances. The underlying mechanism is rooted in their sensory apparatus. Fruit flies possess a specialized organ called the Johnston's organ, located within their antenna. This organ contains hundreds of tiny hairs, called sensilla, that are exquisitely sensitive to changes in air movement. Each sensillum is connected to a neuron that relays information directly to the brain. The key is not just the presence of air movement, but the darter's direction and air's intensity of that movement. When a fruit fly encounters even a slight pressure difference, a gentle breeze pushing one side of its body more than the other, the neurons in the Johnston's organ fire, sending signals to the fly's central nervous system. These signals aren't interpreted as "go this way," but rather as a subtle bias, a tendency to drift in the direction of the pressure gradient. It's like a tiny, internal sail, responding to the currents. The fly isn't consciously steering. It's simply allowing the wind to gently guide its movements. The scale of these migrations is often astonishing, particularly when considering the relatively simple biological system involved. Experiments have shown that our Drosophila can undertake journeys of hundreds, even thousands of kilometers. This remarkable feat of endurance is built upon the repeated, almost instinctive, exploitation of these subtle wind patterns. They don't need to create their own lift. They allow the air to do the work for them. What determines the route taken? Several factors are at play. The most significant is simply the prevailing wind pattern at the altitude where the fruit flies are flying. These patterns are influenced by larger scale atmospheric conditions, high pressure systems, low pressure systems, jet streams, but also by local topography. Mountains, valleys, and coastlines all create complex wind patterns that the fruit flies effectively read through their Johnston's organs. Researchers have mapped the migratory routes of Drosophila across continents, discovering fascinating connections between populations separated by vast distances. For instance, populations in North America have been tracked to move across the Gulf of Mexico, following prevailing winds, and even establish colonies in Europe again, capitalizing on the same atmospheric currents. This demonstrates a surprising degree of interconnectedness within insect populations. The influence of wind isn't always constant. Fruit flies aren't just passively drifting. They possess a limited capacity for active flight control, allowing them to adjust their course slightly, particularly when encountering obstacles or changes in wind direction. However, this active control is used sparingly, primarily to maintain course or avoid immediate threats. The vast majority of their journey is spent in a state of passive wind tracking. Interestingly, the sensitivity of the Johnston's organ seems to be modulated by experience. Studies have shown that fruit flies that have previously encountered a particular wind pattern will exhibit a greater responsiveness to it, suggesting a form of learned behavior. It's a testament to the adaptability of these tiny creatures. The study of fruit fly migration offers a valuable perspective on the broader principles of animal navigation. It highlights the importance of exploiting environmental forces, rather than solely relying on internal mechanisms, in achieving long-distance travel. While birds are masterful aeronauts, building their own movement, fruit flies demonstrate a different, equally impressive, mastery, the art of being carried. Scientists are continuing to unravel the intricacies of this wind tracking behavior. Using sophisticated tracking technologies, miniature radio transmitters attached to individual flies, and advanced modeling techniques to understand the factors that govern their migratory routes. These efforts will undoubtedly shed further light on the remarkable adaptations that allow these tiny insects to traverse our planet, driven not by force, but by the whisper of the wind. The humid air of a summer night hung thick and heavy, buzzing with a different kind of activity than the daytime chorus of cicadas. This was the realm of the night, flying insects, a world of moth wings brushing against leaves, fireflies blinking in synchronized patterns, and beetles navigating by the faintest of scents. While many insects responded to daylight cycles, a significant group, particularly certain moths and beetles, had evolved a profoundly intricate relationship with the moon. Their migrations, often spanning hundreds or even thousands of kilometers, weren't dictated by the rising or setting of the sun, but by the phases of the moon, a rhythm older than recorded human history. The secret lay in a remarkable sensitivity to subtle changes in light levels. a capability far more refined than simply seeing in darkness. These insects possessed specialized photoreceptors, not designed for the sharp contrasts of sunlight, but exquisitely attuned to the spectral composition of moonlight. Different lunar phases presented a unique lightscape, and the insects responded by initiating their movements in anticipation of this changing illumination. The most comprehensive research into this phenomenon has focused on the European lunar moth, Automeris ambiguissima, a creature whose annual migration is almost entirely governed by the moon's cycle. Scientists, using sophisticated tracking technology, including miniature GPS tags and bioluminescent markers, have revealed a pattern of behavior that is still debated and intensely studied. The moths begin their northward journeys when the moon is waxing gibbous, the period when the visible portion of the moon is increasing. It's believed that this phase of increasing light triggers a cascade of hormonal changes within the insect, primarily linked to changes in melatonin production. Melatonin is a hormone known to regulate sleep, but in this case, it appears to act as a powerful navigational cue. As moonlight strengthens during the waxing gibbous, the moths begin their ascent, flying in straight lines directly towards the brightest point of illumination, the moon itself. However, the relationship isn't simply about flying towards the light. The insects are acutely aware of the precise angular changes in moonlight throughout the night. They don't just fly towards the moon, they actively adjust their flaps to maintain a consistent angle of incidence. This is achieved through a complex interplay of internal compasses, likely based on the detection of the Earth's magnetic field and finely tuned visual feedback. The moth's antennae, covered in sensitive sensilla, also play a crucial role in detecting subtle changes in airflow and pheromone gradients, allowing them to fine-tune their movements. The transition to the full moon marked a peak in their migratory activity. During this period, the moths were most active, driven by an intensified hormonal response and a heightened sensitivity to lunar illumination. This intense focus on the moon's light appears to be linked to reproduction. Many moths arrive at their final destinations during the full moon, where they mate and lay their eggs, ensuring the next generation is ready to continue the incredible journey. But the lunar influence extends beyond the European lunar moth. Similar patterns have been observed in a range of other night-flying insects, including several species of beetles, particularly those involved in long-distance dispersal. Research suggests that the timing of their departures and arrivals is often synchronized with the lunar cycle, although the precise mechanisms may vary depending on the species and the specific environmental conditions. One fascinating aspect of this lunar navigation is the potential role of light-seeking as a primitive form of social signaling. The moon's light creates a predictable and consistent visual beacon, allowing insects to communicate with each other about their location and direction. It's theorized that this signals a safe route for other moths, reducing individual energy expenditure and enhancing the overall success of the migration. Furthermore, the lunar cycle impacts more than just the start of migration. The intensity of the moonlight itself appears to influence the insect's flight behavior. During the new moon, when the moon is absent, the insects are noticeably less active, conserving energy while remaining in a state of readiness, waiting for the next phase of the moon to trigger their movement. The evolution of this lunar navigation system is a testament to the power of natural selection. In environments where daylight was scarce, relying on the moon's light provided a reliable and predictable means of orientation, allowing these insects to exploit resources and successfully reproduce. It represents a profound adaptation, a silent, shimmering choreography performed under the watchful eye of the moon, a reminder that even in the darkest nights, there are intricate patterns of movement and communication unfolding around us. The cycle continues, generation after generation, guided by the rhythm of the heavens, a truly remarkable example of nature's ingenuity. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the birch woodlands of southern Scandinavia, painting the leaves in hues of amber and gold. The air held a crispness, carrying the scent of damp earth and ripening berries, a quintessential signal that summer's journey was nearing its end. Within these woods, a tiny drama was unfolding, one of remarkable precision and, increasingly, of surprising social complexity. We're focusing on the willow warbler, Philoscopus trochilus, a small, unassuming bird whose annual migration is a testament to the power of shared knowledge. For many years, scientists believed the willow warbler's migration was largely dictated by an innate internal clock. The bird's brain, it was thought, possessed a genetically encoded rhythm, triggering the instinct to move southwards when certain environmental cues, such as decreasing daylight hours, were detected. While this instinct undoubtedly plays a role, the story of the willow warbler's migration is now understood to be far richer, incorporating a crucial element of learning from its fellows. Young warblers, those fresh from their first spring nests, weren't simply following an internal timetable. They were learning from the experienced adults. The key to this learning process lies in a behavior called natal following. A young warbler, after fledging from its nest, doesn't immediately begin its own southward journey. Instead, it typically stays within a relatively small area, often within a kilometer or two of its birthplace. It relies heavily on the presence of older, more experienced warblers. These adults, having already completed their migration, are already in the process of setting up new breeding territories, and crucially, they are advertising their presence through a complex and beautifully intricate song. The song of the willow warbler isn't just a random series of notes. It's a sophisticated communication system. Each adult warbler possesses a unique song type, a specific combination of phrases and syllables that serves as an identifier. However, the song isn't fixed. Young warblers meticulously copy the songs of the adult warblers they encounter. They don't simply replicate the songs verbatim. Instead, they analyze them, filtering out irrelevant components and subtly adjusting the rhythm and emphasis, creating a modified version, a proto-song, that reflects the characteristics of the adult song. This process of imitation is incredibly detailed, involving not just the overall structure of the song, but also nuances in pitch, tempo, and the duration of individual notes. The effect of this song tutoring is profound. Young warblers exposed to a particular song type are far more likely to adopt that same song type, even if they encounter other adult warblers singing different songs. This isn't just a matter of mimicry. The young birds actively learn to produce the imitated song type themselves, developing the necessary motor skills and vocal control. Researchers have shown that young warblers exposed to experienced adults singing a specific song type will, after a period of observation and practice, begin to sing that song type themselves, often with a remarkable degree of accuracy. But the learning extends beyond the song itself. The experienced adults also demonstrate the optimal locations for establishing breeding territories, areas rich in insects, sheltered from wind, and offering suitable nesting sites. The young warblers observe these choices, and, influenced by the older birds' preferences, tend to select similar locations for their own territories. This behavior isn't a conscious decision based on a detailed understanding of resource availability. It's a learned preference, subtly shaped by observation. The mechanism behind this transmission of information is still being actively researched, but scientists believe it involves a combination of factors. One leading theory suggests that young warblers are learning through social facilitation, where the presence of an experienced adult stimulates the development of the necessary motor skills and vocal control. Another hypothesis proposes that young birds are learning through imitation learning, where they directly copy the behavior of the adult birds. Recent research utilizing advanced tracking technology, miniature GPS tags attached to warblers, has shown that young birds often follow the movements of experienced adults during the initial stages of their migration, further reinforcing the connection between observed behavior and their own actions. Furthermore, the precision of this learned migration strategy is astounding. Willow warblers, guided by the combined knowledge of their social group, consistently choose the same migration routes, returning to the same wintering grounds year after year. This remarkable stability is not due to genetic predisposition alone, but to the enduring power of social learning, demonstrating a level of sophistication in avian behavior that continues to amaze scientists. As the last vestiges of sunlight filtered through the leaves, the willow warblers, guided by generations of learned wisdom, began their southward journey, a small but potent example of how knowledge can be passed down, shaping the lives and migrations of an entire species. The vast, darkening canvas of the night sky has always been a vital map for creatures who travel by it, and the migration of birds, in particular, relies heavily on this celestial guidance. For billions of years, birds have navigated using the stars, the moon, and subtle variations in the Earth's magnetic field. However, in the last century, a new, often invisible, threat has emerged: artificial light. This isn't a threat measured in predator numbers or storm fronts, but one that fundamentally disrupts the very mechanisms birds use to find their way. The core of avian navigation is intrinsically linked to the difference between day and night. During the day, birds gather information, a process called positively phototactic orientation, by observing the position of the sun. They learn the sun's relationship to their direction, creating an internal reference point they can use to steer. At night, this system isn't helpful, and birds turn to other cues. But when artificial light floods the landscape, it interferes with these nighttime navigational strategies. Consider the humble European robin, a common sight across Europe and Asia. These birds, and many others, utilize a technique known as horizontal light marking. They scan the horizon, detecting the steady glow of towns and cities. The light acts like a beacon, a visual landmark that allows them to maintain their heading. If a robin is flying north towards its breeding grounds, and it encounters a brightly lit industrial area, it will be drawn towards that light, essentially marking the horizon with it. This can be a significant deviation from their intended course. The bird isn't intentionally trying to fly towards the city. It's simply responding to the strongest visual stimulus it detects. The consequences of this response are far more serious than a slight detour. Research, particularly using GPS tracking and telemetry, has repeatedly demonstrated that light pollution causes birds to veer off course, often dramatically. Some species, like the barn swallow, have been documented flying hundreds of kilometers in a straight line towards a streetlight, effectively abandoning their established migratory routes. This isn't a random mistake. The birds are behaving in a way that makes evolutionary sense, seeking out the brightest light source, which appears to be a point of stability in the overwhelming darkness. The issue is amplified by the fact that many bird migration routes pass directly through or near urban areas. These areas, representing concentrated sources of artificial light, can act as navigation traps, pulling birds off course and increasing the energy expenditure required to find their true path. Imagine trying to follow a winding road when a bright, alluring highway appears just a few feet away. The temptation to pull onto the highway would be considerable, even if it meant completely losing your way. Furthermore, The type of light itself plays a crucial role. White light, particularly blue light, the color emitted by many LED lights, is particularly disruptive. Blue light is the most effective at scattering in the atmosphere, meaning it travels furthest distances. This increased range means that the effect of a single streetlight can be felt by birds many kilometers away, creating a pervasive disorienting field. Conversely, amber or red light is far less disruptive, as it scatters less and is less noticeable to birds. Research is increasingly focused on replacing white LED lights with amber or red alternatives in urban areas to mitigate this impact. The disruption extends beyond simple course deviations. Light pollution can also interfere with the bird's ability to detect subtle cues, essential for timing their migration. The timing of migration is often linked to changes in the amount of available light, and artificial light can skew these signals, causing birds to arrive at their breeding grounds too early or too late, potentially disrupting crucial ecological processes. It can also affect their ability to clock their position using the movement of the stars, a sophisticated system that allows them to determine their latitude and longitude with remarkable precision. The impact isn't limited to large migratory species. Even smaller birds, like songbirds and waders, are vulnerable. Recent studies have shown that even subtle light pollution can alter the foraging behavior of these birds, affecting their ability to find food and ultimately impacting their survival. Scientists are now actively working to understand the full extent of the problem and develop strategies to protect migrating birds. This includes advocating for the use of shielded lighting, directing light downwards, rather than upwards, reducing the amount of light that spills into the sky, and promoting the adoption of dark sky initiatives that prioritize the preservation of dark areas for wildlife. The goal isn't to eliminate artificial light entirely, but to manage it in a way that minimizes its disruptive effects on these incredible travelers. The future of many migratory species may depend on our ability to recognize and address this quiet, pervasive threat to their ancient, instinctive journeys. The air thins dramatically as the migrating birds and insects ascend, chasing warmer temperatures or seeking breeding grounds. What most people don't readily grasp is the immense challenge this presents to their bodies. The very environment they're navigating, the high altitudes of the mountains, the upper reaches of the atmosphere, is characterized by a significant reduction in oxygen levels. This condition, known as hypoxia, isn't just a minor inconvenience. It triggers a cascade of extraordinary physiological adaptations, a silent, desperate battle waged within each creature's cells. At sea level, our bodies are accustomed to a concentration of oxygen that's nearly perfect for our metabolic needs. We've evolved mechanisms to efficiently extract this oxygen from the air we breathe and to transport it rapidly to where it's needed: our muscles, our brains, our hearts. However, as altitude increases, the partial pressure of oxygen, the amount of oxygen molecules available, decreases. This means each breath contains fewer oxygen molecules, and the diffusion of oxygen from the surrounding air into the blood becomes less effective. For avian migrants, particularly those undertaking long-distance journeys like the Arctic tern, this is critically important. Their flight muscles are enormous powerhouses, demanding a constant, substantial supply of oxygen to fuel sustained flapping. The muscles themselves, surprisingly, are remarkably tolerant of hypoxia, a key factor in their ability to sustain flight at extreme altitudes. However, the rest of the body isn't so resilient. The heart, for example, needs oxygen to efficiently pump blood, and the brain, responsible for navigation and decision-making, is incredibly sensitive to oxygen deprivation. The immediate response involves a complex interplay of hormonal signaling. The sympathetic nervous system, responsible for the fight or flight response, is activated. This triggers the release of adrenaline and noradrenaline, increasing heart rate and blood pressure, initially to try and deliver more oxygen to vital organs. The body also shifts its metabolic priorities, reducing the demand for energy in less critical tissues. Non-essential processes, like digestion, are slowed down. This is a defensive strategy, prioritizing the survival of the core functions. Beyond the immediate hormonal response, the red blood cells themselves undergo fascinating changes. The hemoglobin, the protein within red blood cells that binds to oxygen, increases its affinity for oxygen. It essentially becomes better at grabbing onto the available molecules. This phenomenon, known as the Bohr effect, is a vital adaptation. Additionally, the red blood cells themselves swell slightly, providing more space for hemoglobin and enhancing their oxygen carrying capacity. The bone marrow, normally busy producing new red blood cells, ramps up its activity, adding fresh, highly oxygen-adapted cells to the bloodstream. In insects, the situation is equally demanding, though the precise physiological responses may differ slightly. Insect flight is remarkably energy efficient, but still relies heavily on oxygen. Similar to birds, hypoxia triggers metabolic shifts, prioritizing energy expenditure towards muscle function. Many insect species, particularly those migrating over mountainous terrain, exhibit a marked increase in mitochondrial activity. Mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cell, and boosting their activity allows for a more efficient extraction of energy from sugars, even under oxygen-deficient conditions. Researchers have also observed changes in the oxygen transport proteins within insect hemolymph, the insect equivalent of blood. Similar to hemoglobin, these proteins enhance their oxygen binding capabilities. The duration of these adaptations, however, can vary significantly depending on the species, the altitude reached, and the length of the migration. Some insects will demonstrate a prolonged increase in hemoglobin affinity, while others will rely more on enhanced mitochondrial function and immediate metabolic adjustments. The ability to acclimatize to hypoxia isn't permanent. As migrants descend to lower altitudes, where oxygen levels increase, the body gradually reverts to its normal state. The hormonal signals subside, hemoglobin affinity decreases, and mitochondrial activity returns to baseline levels. This process, known as de-acclimatization, highlights the extraordinary plasticity of these creatures' physiological systems. Interestingly, scientists are beginning to explore whether the experience of repeated hypoxia exposure can lead to a degree of habituation, a sort of physiological memory that could improve future migrations. It's a complex area of research, but the evidence suggests that some animals may learn to better cope with the stresses of high-altitude flight, refining their oxygen extraction strategies and maximizing their chances of success. The journey for these migrating creatures is not just a physical one. It's a profound testament to the incredible adaptability and resilience of life itself, a silent, sustained effort to defy the limitations of a thinning atmosphere. The Atlantic Ocean stretches out, a vast, shimmering expanse of blue, seemingly endless under a sky of pale gray. It's a place of immense power, a place where storms brew with ferocious intensity and calm. Deceptive beauty often prevails. And out here, far from the familiar shores of Scotland and Iceland, a remarkable journey is unfolding: the migration of the northern gannet. These birds, with their striking white plumage and distinctive black bills, are masters of a specific navigational technique, one that relies almost entirely on the patterns of the land, a skill profoundly shaped by the way they perceive the world. Unlike many migratory birds that utilize the sun's position or respond to magnetic fields, the gannet's strategy is remarkably grounded in visual landmarks. They don't know where they're going in the abstract, like a general leading an army. Instead, they build incredibly detailed mental maps of the coastline, painstakingly constructed over many generations. This isn't a simple matter of memorizing every rock and cliff. It's about recognizing recurring shapes, patterns, and relative positions. The gannet's brain is exquisitely tuned to detect these visual cues, particularly when the weather obscures other navigational tools. The gannet's hunting grounds, primarily around the Isle of Rum and other islands of the Inner Hebrides, are characterized by dramatic, jagged coastlines. Massive sea cliffs rise steeply from the turbulent waters, interspersed with numerous small, rocky islets. These islands themselves are not uniform. They possess unique topographic features, sheer rock faces, sheltered bays, and even the subtle contours of the sea bead visible just beneath the surface. The gannet's navigational prowess is intimately linked to recognizing and responding to these variations. Scientists have been studying gannet navigation using a fascinating method involving decoys and tracking. Researchers create artificial islands, essentially large, stable platforms resembling the natural rock formations. These decoys are carefully placed in different locations around the gannet's feeding grounds. Then, the researchers observe how the gannets react. Remarkably, juvenile gannets, even those raised in captivity, will instinctively fly towards these decoys, selecting those that most closely resemble the real islands. This demonstrates that they are not simply reacting to a fixed point, but rather assessing the similarity of the visual landscape. The key to this visual recognition isn't just about size or shape. It's about subtle details, the texture of the rock, the angle of the slopes, the way the sunlight reflects off the surface. Gannets possess exceptional stereoscopic vision, meaning they see the world with two slightly different perspectives, allowing them to accurately judge distances and the three-dimensional contours of the landscape. This, combined with their powerful visual memory, creates a remarkably detailed mental representation. Furthermore, gannets appear to read the coast as a sequence. They don't simply memorize individual landmarks, they learn to recognize the air's relationship between them. For example, a young gannet might first learn to identify a particular cove, and then, over time, learn to associate it with the cliffs that border it. This sequential understanding allows them to navigate even when landmarks are temporarily obscured by fog or rain. The bird essentially remembers the order in which it encountered things. The effectiveness of this visual navigation strategy is especially apparent during periods of poor weather. When visibility is reduced, the gannets rely almost entirely on their learned visual memory. They fly relatively close to the coast, meticulously following the contours of the land, even in conditions that would completely disorient a bird relying solely on the sun or magnetic fields. It's a testament to the power of accumulated experience and the remarkable plasticity of the gannet's brain. Interestingly, research has also shown that gannets can adjust their navigational strategy based on the age and experience of the individual. Older, more seasoned gannets appear to have a more nuanced understanding of the coastline, allowing them to navigate with greater precision and in more challenging conditions. Younger birds, while capable of learning, require more time and experience to develop their sophisticated visual navigational skills. The gannet's reliance on visual landmarks provides a compelling case study in how animals can use their environment to create extraordinarily complex cognitive maps. It highlights the importance of learning and experience in shaping migratory behavior and demonstrates the incredible adaptability of these magnificent birds. As the sun begins to set over the Atlantic, casting long shadows across the water, the gannets continue their tireless journey, guided by the silent, intricate patterns of the land, a remarkable illustration of nature's ingenuity. The shimmering dusk settled over the fields, and the last of the evening insects began their intricate preparations for the night's journey. Tonight, however, a subtle and insidious threat hung in the air, a threat largely invisible to the human eye, yet profoundly disrupting the carefully choreographed movements of countless creatures. We've discussed how light and altitude can challenge migration, but a different kind of interference was quietly taking hold, affecting the very ability of insects to find their way, to feed, and ultimately, to complete their journeys. This is the story of how pesticide exposure affects insect migration. For generations, insects have relied on a remarkably sophisticated internal compass, guided by the Earth's magnetic field and the position of the sun. They use polarized light in the atmosphere, an essentially invisible pattern of light, as another navigational tool. But the widespread use of pesticides, particularly neonicotinoids, is creating a slow, devastating disruption of this natural system. These chemicals, designed to protect crops from pests, are shockingly persistent in the environment and have unforeseen consequences for insect populations far beyond the intended target. Neonicotinoids don't immediately kill insects. Instead, they act as a neurotoxin, interfering with the insect's central nervous system. They bind to nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, proteins that carry signals across nerve cells, causing paralysis or erratic movement. This seems simple enough, but the impact extends far beyond the insect directly affected. It starts with the pollinators, particularly bees and butterflies, who are frequently exposed through contaminated pollen and nectar. The key here is the disruption of their sensory abilities. As a bee collects pollen, it's inadvertently absorbing these chemicals. The neurological effects don't just limit its mobility. They also begin to compromise its ability to accurately perceive its surroundings. Imagine trying to follow a complex route. When your senses are subtly skewed, the magnetic field feels less clear. The patterns of polarized light are distorted, and the sun's position becomes unreliable. This disorientation is not a sudden, dramatic event. It's a gradual weakening of their navigational skills. Research has shown that even extremely low concentrations of neonicotinoids can cause measurable changes in bee behavior. Bees exposed to these chemicals exhibit reduced foraging efficiency, meaning they spend more time searching for food and less time collecting it. They may wander off course, unable to reorient themselves, and may struggle to navigate back to their hive. The impact is most pronounced in young bees, whose navigational abilities are still developing. These fledgling bees are particularly vulnerable, as their reliance on instinct and sensory input is at its greatest. But the story doesn't end with bees. Many migratory insects, like certain moths and butterflies, rely on similar sensory mechanisms. The effects of neonicotinoids on these insects are equally concerning. Studies have demonstrated that exposure can impair their ability to locate suitable breeding grounds, hindering their reproductive success. Moths, for example, often use polarized light to guide their nocturnal flights, and pesticide exposure can disrupt this crucial signal, leading to errors in direction and timing. The consequences ripple through entire ecosystems. Insects are vital links in the food chain, and their reduced migratory success directly impacts the organisms that depend on them. Migratory insects transport pollen, facilitating plant reproduction, and they serve as a food source for birds, amphibians, and other animals. When insect migrations are compromised, these delicate ecological relationships are threatened. Furthermore, the chemical exposure doesn't just affect the insects themselves. It also contaminates the environments they travel through. As insects die, their bodies release the pesticides, which can then be absorbed by plants and soil, further spreading the contamination. This creates a vicious cycle, exacerbating the problem and expanding the area affected. Scientists are now focusing on understanding the long-term effects of pesticide exposure on insect migratory behavior. They're using sophisticated tracking technologies, miniature GPS devices, attached to insects to monitor their movements in real time. These trackers reveal subtle changes in flight paths and durations, providing valuable data on how pesticides are impacting insect navigation. Researchers are also investigating the potential for insects to develop some resistance to these chemicals, a possibility that could offer a glimmer of hope, but one that must be approached with caution. The challenge is immense. Reducing the reliance on neonicotinoids and exploring alternative pest control methods is critical. Promoting integrated pest management strategies, combining biological controls, crop rotation, and other sustainable practices can significantly minimize the harmful effects on insect populations. It's a complex puzzle with many pieces, and the solutions require a collaborative effort between scientists, farmers, and policymakers. As the last of the insects settle into their nightly routines, it's important to remember the unseen battles being fought, the quiet struggle for survival against a persistent, widespread threat. The preservation of insect migrations isn't just about protecting a single species. It's about safeguarding the intricate web of life that sustains our planet. The continued health of these journeys, reliant as they are on the delicate balance of nature, speaks volumes about the future of our world. The ceaseless journey of birds and insects has always hinted at a deep, ancient programming, a genetic imperative woven into the fabric of their existence. But while we've spent considerable time unraveling the navigational techniques of soaring gannets and the remarkable homing abilities of swallows, a surprising area of research is revealing the evolution of directional orientation in a group often overlooked beetles. Specifically, the directional biases exhibited by several species of long-distance migrating beetles, particularly those within the Chrysomelidae family, known for their incredible journeys, are challenging our understanding of how this fundamental migratory behavior first arose. For decades, beetle migration was largely dismissed as a mere consequence of resource availability, a simple follow-the-food strategy. However, mounting evidence points to a more sophisticated, almost instinctual orientation system. The initial breakthroughs came from studying the Galarucella calmariensis, a species famed for its annual migration across the English Channel, a distance of approximately 90 kilometers. Researchers began to observe that these beetles consistently oriented themselves with remarkable accuracy towards the southwest, even when artificially displaced. It wasn't simply a reaction to changes in wind direction. They seemed to possess a profound sense of direction, independent of environmental cues. The key to understanding this orientation lies in the discovery of specialized sensory structures within the beetle's antennae. While many insects rely primarily on olfactory signals for navigation, the Galarucella calmariensis and several other migrating beetles possess incredibly sensitive mechanoreceptors located on their antennae. These aren't just simple touch receptors. They're exquisitely tuned to detect minute variations in the Earth's magnetic field. This geomagnetic sense, once considered almost exclusively a characteristic of birds, is now recognized as a prevalent navigational tool across a diverse range of invertebrate species. The exact mechanism remains under intense investigation, but scientists theorize that the antennae detect the distortion of magnetic field lines caused by the Earth's rotation, essentially allowing the beetle to feel its location relative to the magnetic poles. What's particularly fascinating is the degree of precision demonstrated. Experiments involved exposing beetles to rotating magnetic fields, allowing researchers to pinpoint the specific frequencies and orientations that triggered directional movement. It wasn't just a general southward movement. Beetles responded distinctly to changes in the magnetic field's inclination angle, the angle at which the field lines intersect the Earth's surface. This indicates a remarkable ability to process and interpret complex magnetic information, far beyond a simple magnetic compass response. Further research extended to other Chrysomelidae species, revealing variations in their magnetic sensitivity and the specific orientations they preferred. Some beetles, like Chrysomela spragueana, exhibit a strong preference for westward orientation, while others show a pronounced bias toward southeast. These differences likely reflect the specific environmental pressures and resource availability encountered during their migratory journeys, acting as selective filters shaping the magnetic sensitivity of the population. The evolutionary origins of this magnetic orientation are still shrouded in some mystery, but several hypotheses are being actively explored. One prevalent theory suggests that this ability initially evolved as a defense mechanism. The Earth's magnetic field provides a constant reference point, potentially helping beetles navigate through complex, unpredictable terrains, avoiding pitfalls and concealed predators. It's conceivable that this early magnetic sensitivity was advantageous in densely vegetated environments where visual landmarks were scarce, allowing the beetles to establish a reliable internal map. Another compelling line of investigation centers around the concept of magnetic inheritance. Scientists are beginning to identify genes potentially involved in the development and function of these magnetic sensors. While the genetic basis of magnetic orientation is complex and not fully understood, preliminary studies have identified candidate genes related to ion channel regulation, structures critical for transmitting electrical signals in response to magnetic stimuli. These genes may have been subtly altered through natural selection, gradually amplifying the beetle's sensitivity to magnetic fields over countless generations. The discovery of magnetic orientation in beetles has profound implications for our understanding of the evolution of migratory behavior in the animal kingdom. It demonstrates that sophisticated navigational strategies, once considered the exclusive domain of birds and marine mammals, can emerge in seemingly primitive invertebrates. The intricate sensory systems and genetic pathways involved provide a compelling case study in evolutionary adaptation, highlighting the remarkable plasticity of the nervous system and the power of natural selection to shape behavior in response to environmental demands. Moreover, the presence of magnetic orientation in beetles expands the potential range of organisms capable of long-distance migration, suggesting that this strategy may be more widespread than previously imagined. As research continues, it's increasingly likely that the beetle's ability to feel the Earth's magnetic field will unlock further secrets about the origins of migration and the incredible capacity of life to adapt and thrive across vast distances. If these journeys through the wings and tiny feet have eased your spirit, consider subscribing and sharing these moments with those who seek solace. As the final calls of migration fade, allow your mind to settle like a quiet stream, flowing gently and unhurried until sleep embraces you.